This time on Town Line Garage, pop rivets, sheet metal, and carpet. Fixing up the dash on the GMC. She broke in two. Well, we're back in our 2003 GMC. I'm going to show you the after effect because when I was doing these repairs, we're actually getting ready to go on vacation. Happens to a lot of vehicles, especially down south, is you got the plastic cap that gets weathered and cracked. This one, a little bit worse than others, I think, because it's a diesel and 3/4 ton truck, and it did come from a southern state before it came up here in Michigan. So I actually had it apart trying to fix some little tabs that are up here. So I was working on gluing those, and I had a small crack here. Unfortunately, as I started working on the small crack, the whole dashboard broke in two. So you can see the Velcro here. You can probably guess where this is going in the end. But I'm gonna roll through how I ended up fixing my dashboard that I had one piece in each hand the night before vacation. This whole thing snapped in two. Lucky for me, we had a fair stock of fix-it stuff around. What I ended up doing is I started to try and use a 2-part plastic epoxy to glue this back together. Let me shoot back a couple steps before that. I'm not a plastics expert, but there are some plastics that you can weld back together. I did make some attempts to melt this. What that turned into is this being about as brittle as you know, lava rock. So I would not recommend doing that unless you know what kind of plastic you got. I've seen some plastic heat staple machines, looked at that. As brittle as this was, I don't think that would last. Hopped on to Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. I could not find one in halfway decent shape, this color, for any kind of price I was willing to pay for. I would have really liked just to put a new dash in here. GM doesn't make them anymore, so I had to make do. What I did, after I melted half of this apart and tried to stick it back together and had that break apart on me a couple times, I came in with some 2-part epoxy, had this upside down sitting on some rags and boards. And I say rags and boards because this has got a funky shape to it. So I got everything sitting on the floor backed up anywhere where I need to back it up so it would sit fairly stable. Because regardless of how I was going to put this together, I needed this to be flush as possible here, because I knew I'd have to look at this for a little while. So I used some 2-part epoxy in all these cracks here in between, got it positioned best I could back to where everything was supposed to be. Within the 2-part epoxy, I put 2-part epoxy down on the back side. I had some white on white race car sheet metal. That or just some aluminum or steel flashing would work well. These are the smallest aluminum rivets that I could find. So the sheet metal on the back works like a big washer. You could not use steel rivets or anything larger than some small aluminum rivets if it was as brittle, if your dash is as brittle as this is. This worked okay, and I didn't have any of these guys pull through. So if you could picture behind here, I've got a strip of aluminum that's glued down, and then I clamped it up and then shot these in. One at a time, pop it in, pull the rivet. Pop it in, pull the rivet. I did not get this whole pattern sketched out, drill it, and then put it back in. I had to gently walk the rivets and the sheet metal down. If I remember right, I think I actually ended up having a couple different pieces just because of this strange contour. So not the prettiest thing, but if you're in a pinch, it is fairly stable. So this is 2-part epoxy in between there. I also went ahead and used some goop shoe glue. There's a few different brand names that would make it. It's a more pliable glue, because the whole reason this broke is because it was too rigid and brittle. So as you're looking at making repairs on plastic and any components, try and look at why it broke and what kind of abuse it's going through. All the little tabs that are up here shoved underneath that hold the front into place are all glued down with that goop, because I know that this is gonna vibrate and shake around. So what that softer glue will do is kind of take some of that vibration and take the beating out of the plastic. I don't think I'd want to go as soft as a silicone, but some people might have good luck with that. Now, after staring at this for a while, I finally did enough window shopping where I decided I was going to try out one of these carpet mats. This is not something that I was a fan of before, but for what you pay for these things versus the dash cap, it's a pretty solid product. Now, the alternative to this would be, one, continue to shop Facebook, Craigslist, junkyard, whatever. Get yourself another dash that isn't cracked. Another option is there are a few companies that make a hard cap that gets glued on top of this. They have a pretty solid reputation from what I could tell, but I didn't want to have that step up and permanent glue in case I find another dash, because I'm still going to be on the lookout for another dashboard for a good price. This carpet would give me an opportunity to cover this up, give me a decent finish, maybe even cut down a little bit of sound, because this diesel does clang and bang around a little bit, and the carpet could eat some of that up, were some of my thoughts. I wasn't sure how happy I'd be with the edge finish, because again, I didn't want the cap because I didn't want this other layer, this aftermarket looking nasty edges looking at me when I'm driving down the road. But I've been rather impressed by this cover. Let me get it up into place, and I can kind of roll through how this goes down in what I've liked about it. Installation is super easy. They give you some alcohol pads. You want to make sure that you clean off any Armor All or any slippery stuff you got on your dashboard, bubble gum, whatnot. And they're going to give you strips of Velcro to put down. So you're going to wipe it down and stick your Velcro in the areas where it wants to bubble up. I haven't even finished putting this down, call it permanently, with the Velcro. I just came in the key areas that was kind of flopping up. It sits down there that well that it didn't really bother me. I thought this thing would drive me nuts flopping around, but it just lays into place. They've done a nice job of researching the dashboard and making the material fit. It's not a really complex part. You know, it's not rocket science, but I think they've done their homework and they've done a nice job. As you're looking at these covers, make sure you look at the picture that they give you of a complete dashboard, because usually the visuals I saw, they give you a little kind of a square of what the color would be, and then they give you a shot of like, here's what your whole dashboard would look like. Make sure you look at that whole dashboard picture. I knew I was going to be erring on the darker side of color because they have a ton of different colors that you can get these. I didn't want to have it too light, so mine is a little bit off, but I think that it actually matches the floor and the seats, which is the other. This is the velour finish, which my seats are velour. I know it's off a bit, but it's what I wanted. I actually spent more time staring at those colors than I did really doing anything else on this installation. This is a product by Dash Designs, made in the USA. They've done a nice job of figuring out how this thing is going to lay down here. You know, I pretty much put this in here one-handed, and it goes where it needs to go. I mean, this is light material, so it's not going to sit down like a glued down product, but it just sits there. It fits really well. I can understand why these are so popular down south in Texas, Arizona. And I'm still going to be on the lookout for a new dash, but in the meantime, this is pretty nice, and I might even put this over another one. I'm going to keep looking for a new dash, because I think even though I've put a pretty hefty repair down in the middle of this one, I think there's other areas that are going to continue to crack on me. So we'll see what happens. I am going to go around and finish putting more of these little Velcro tabs, mostly up here. I'm just going to come down in some of these areas where it could be just a little bit more taut and pulled down. I want to make sure my vents stay stay open and that the edges hold down tight. But even just a little bit in the corners, I mean, it's barely, you got to expect this to be up just a little bit there. You can't expect it to be, have a glued down look, but it really sits there pretty nicely. I actually ordered mine through Rock Auto. Really solid price. I want to say this thing was like 40 bucks or less. There's a ton of different materials. I like the velour because it went with the interior of this truck. If I had leather seats, I'd probably go with a, I think they've got a suede. That might be a good look if you've got leather. They have full-on carpet, like the carpet that would be in the floor of your car as well. If you've got a cracked dash, don't lose hope. You can get out some glue. If you got it laying around, if you go to the store, I mean, there's things that you can do to keep things together on a budget and not have to look at a big hole in your dashboard, not have to listen to all those rattles. You can have something that will, you know, look like a well-kept machine. Well, that's what we got for you this time, folks. Appreciate you watching. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. I much appreciate that. Till next time, keep her between the ditches. Adios.